Hi, my name's Alan Boldon. I'm Chief Executive of Dartington Trust and the founder director of weaveglobal.org. I'm here today with my colleague Marina Kim, and we're going to be having a conversation about trauma and transitions in higher education. We want to open out some of the themes that we've been discussing that really explore different kinds of trauma and how they've affected our higher education institutions and how we might want to engage with that. But I'll hand over to Marina, who can introduce herself.
Great. Marina Kim, co-founder of Ashoka U, which is a global network of higher education institutions seeking to build social impact into the core culture and curriculum. And it's actually through this lens that I have thought about trauma quite deeply. And, I think the pandemic that we are in has opened a lot of space, unfortunately, to have more conversations and to realize that we are all experiencing a collective trauma, and that educators are going through trauma themselves, potentially their caregivers in their own home or in their communities. The students they work with are going through their own traumas. Higher ed has had to adapt and turn itself upside down, inside out in so many new, radical, disruptive ways because of the pandemic, whether it's going completely online instantly, but then also the implications and the stress on educators to adapt their entire curriculum and pedagogy to be virtual, which, they were not always equipped and trained for. So I think just what I'm seeing with the network of campuses and the students and the higher ed leaders that I'm working with is that there's just been an intensified state of crisis that we are part of. And as part of that, I've noticed there's intensified emotional roller coasters. And I've just been thinking a lot about what might leaders in higher education do and institutions do to be more supportive of acknowledging and minimizing the trauma that everyone that are their stakeholders are going through.
Great. Yeah, I think it's worth us saying we're doing this as part of the Learning Planet initiative, and we had a previous conversation. We were really looking at the kind of crises that are facing the world, with growth, inequality and inequity, climate emergency, the horrors of misogyny and racism, and mass biodiversity loss. So many interlinked, interwoven crises, and really saying, well, what can our higher education institutions do about this? And really quite quickly, we got into some questions about what the purpose of those institutions were, what their historical purpose was, because a number of institutions were founded really to engage much more with the towns, the cities, the regions, the places they were in, and really to look at how those places could thrive. But actually, the shape of the institutions very often worked against that. So there was all sorts of divisions, segregation, privilege built into the institutions. And in effect, I think in some of our conversation, Marina, we've been really looking at how some of those traumas are embedded in the institutions. And I think it is a key feature of trauma that people are silenced, and also even the people who have effectively been complicit in the silence are propping up the institutional form. But it is a feature of trauma that people don't want to look at it. So it's very difficult to raise these issues. We're seeing the rise of Me Too and Black Lives Matter and many other sort of important voices now saying we can't ignore these incredibly important issues and trauma. And I think the other thing we've talked about, which relates to all of this, is transgenerational trauma. So there's all sorts of layers to this. There'll be people really facing this in their everyday, and the institutions aren't helping and may even be compounding problems. And equally well, there are sort of layers of historical trauma that are very difficult to unearth, but vital that we do. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, so just there's so many different dimensions. I'm really excited to explore deeper and more broadly, but this is what we are inviting all of you to join us in. We are looking for an interactive, dynamic, solutions-focused set of conversations that we are hosting as part of Learning Planet's learning circles. We invite you to this series of conversations on the role of trauma, but honestly, we really want to ask the reverse, like, how do we go beyond trauma? How do we heal? How do we lead higher education to acknowledge trauma, rectify past trauma, and also think about what are the needs of students right now? What is the best way to interact with communities right now? And what is the role of higher education right now, given that there are so many existential threats happening? And I do think that there is an opportunity for new models of leadership for the students that we're equipping, where they become more resilient to trauma. That the pandemic and the other crises are not just one-off events, they are a new normal. And so we need to support and equip students and ourselves to be more resilient and able to deal with ambiguity, complexity, fear, and uncertainty, and have that be part of the new model of leadership. And I think higher ed has a huge opportunity to play a leadership role within that conversation of how we support and equip a new generation of leaders, but also how higher ed can be a powerful force in positive change in their communities.
Yeah, and important to say. So we're gonna host 3 conversations, and in each of those, we're going to do a little bit of framing, but really ask other expert voices to open out different ways that we can think into trauma, looking at case studies and also resources that might help us think into and engage with these challenges. And then hopefully coming out of that, looking for ways that we can work towards positive steps, next steps, solutions. I'd just drop in. I was talking to someone the other day, someone quite senior in the UN, and they said 2 things. And they said, one, don't look to the UN for innovation. And they also said, why are you bothering with universities? They're kind of just part of the problem, don't bother. And I found myself moving in and out of academia, but there is so much locked into those institutions, resources, potential, power, all sorts that, it kind of feels like, well, we need to engage with this massive infrastructure and look at how it can be transformed, so that we can engage with these challenges rather than just ignoring them or letting these institutions kind of continue in their current trajectory.
So hopefully this has provoked you. Hopefully you have lots of ideas. We invite you to join this conversation series and look forward to welcome you to the Learning Planet community.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. See you all there.